A very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Design Meetup 2.0, powered by IxDF Kerala and co-sponsored by Experion Technologies. Some of us as work in a large team, and you may have faced difficulties in maintaining consistencies in coding standards throughout the project. In this case, a CSS architecture is essential to write readable and maintainable structures. BEM is one of the most popular methodologies used to reduce CSS code and make the code more maintainable. In this session, we will explore the tweaked version of block element modifier, that is ABEM approach, and we will see how we can benefit from it. An introduction to our speaker, Nidhin Mohan E. He is a lead UI developer having more than 8 years of experience in UI development. He likes to research on latest web technologies and implement the best practices. He is very passionate about building interactive web interfaces, especially SVG animations and micro interactions are his favorite. He is always keen to follow a process-oriented approach to make the code and make the web application more optimizable with higher quality and better user experience. Apart from this, he designs and builds watch faces for smartwatches. He likes to read about scientific discoveries, astronomy, and human history, and more. For better experience, we have muted the audience mic during the presentation. After all, we will have a Q&A session and you will be able to unmute and ask your questions. You may also type in the questions in the chat window. A recorded version of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel. For those of you just joining us, welcome to ABEM naming convention by Nidhin Mohan. Over to you, Nidhin.
Okay. Thank you, Princhu, for giving such a great introduction, and I'm welcoming you all to the presentation. Today's topic is about ABEM, an advanced version of BEM. It is one of the most popular CSS methodology nowadays. Probably you are less likely to have heard of such a topic in general. So let's start by giving you a few basic things to understand this. So I'm quickly going through the very basics of UI development. As we all work in the field related to user interfaces, we know what a website is and how the website is made up of. We know that the basic structure of a web page is actually built using hypertext markup language. You can see in this image, it gives the basic layout of the content. Then some rules or styles in CSS transforms the layout into beautiful interfaces. As you can see, the CSS primarily handles the look and feel of the web page. Also, with the help of CSS, we can even make the website responsive as well. So when you look at the image, you can see that HTML gives the structure, the layout HTML with the help of, there are some predefined tags in HTML. With the help of those predefined tags, the UI developer can define the structure of the HTML page. And then with the help of CSS, also there are some predefined CSS rules are there. With the help of those CSS rules, the HTML developer can convert this skeleton or structure into a beautiful looking website by applying the desired styling to this particular web page. This is how it works. All right. The web developers used to lay out web pages according to the box model concept. Something look like this. In web development, the CSS box model refers to how the HTML elements are modeled in browser engines and how the dimension of the HTML are derived from the CSS properties like I already said earlier. And this box model is used to define the space between the HTML elements. As you can see in the picture, it consists of the content of the box where the text and images appear, then the padding. It clears an area around the content. The padding is actually transparent. Then the border, a border that goes around the padding and the content. And finally, the margin. It clears an area outside the border. The margin is also transparent. Actually, this is the fundamental concept of for the composition of HTML pages. Then the layout. Actually, you would not get the layout like this with HTML alone. You must apply some styles or rules to make it look like this. This is just for giving you some basic idea about how the layout is built, or I want to give you an idea about the layout concept in HTML. While building a web page, the HTML developer visualize the layout in his mind and make it accordingly. As you can see in the slide, you could see a series of boxes, each containing a discrete element. A few of these boxes can be seen nested, that is placed one inside another. So as you look in to this image, you can see that this is actually nested inside this section area. These content also is nested inside this area. This one is also nested inside this article like that. So this is how the layout is built. Let's have a look at this layout. You can see many blocks from this. We can name these blocks as the header, article, and aside, etc. There are many subblocks inside each main blocks as well. If you take the header block, for example, as you can see, it contains several smaller boxes like hamburger menu, logo, search area, then the navigation area here, and the user avatar area, etc. Likewise, we can name the other main blocks in the UI as well. All these smaller boxes and the outer box together to form a layout. And then with the help of CSS rules or properties, we can give styling to each of these blocks. This is how we can structure the web pages and make them looks appealing. The main advantages of CSS is the added design flexibility and interactivity it brings to web development. So why CSS is important? It actually improves the website presentation. It makes updates easier and smoother, and it helps web pages load faster as well. Even if you are a good UI developer, you must pay attention to some important facts while building a layout using HTML and CSS. The written code must look clean, readable to everyone, especially in a code sharing environment, and it could be maintainable and well organized as well. That means we must eliminate the repetitive coding style of HTML and CSS, which makes the development work faster and more consistent. Considering all these, there are many systematic approaches that we take for writing proper CSS. This is what called CSS methodologies. Nowadays, there are more advanced CSS methodologies that offer even more workflow efficiency. Also, there will greater control over the layout, allowing us to make precise section-wise changes as well. Let's have a look at the most popular CSS methodology up there. Because of the time constraints, I'm not going to explain about each in detail. All right, they are object-oriented CSS, which separating content with objects. Then scalable and modular architecture for CSS, even named as SMAC CSS. It is like a style guide to our CSS, which mainly having 5 categories of CSS rules. Then suit CSS, it gives structured class names and meaningful hyphens, somewhat similar to the use of utility classes in Bootstrap. We already know that. Then atomic CSS, it breaking down styles into atomic or invisible pieces. And the one we are going to discuss about is BEM, the block element modifier methodology, which is based on a well-structured CSS naming convention. So these are the most important methodologies we are using. No matter what technology you choose to use in your project, you will benefit from the advantages of more structured CSS and UI, that's for sure. But the reason why BEM methodology is getting much attention over the others is basically because it is mainly less confusing than other methods. um, and both the designers and developers can consistently name the components for easier communication between team members. That means we can follow a proper naming convention using BEM. Then it provides a way to arrange our CSS classes into independent modules. So the module-wise categorization arrange the code in a much more organized way. Also, BEM eliminates the nested CSS selectors. That means every single HTML element has its own CSS class. We will talk about, I will explain that in the later session. Uh, so BEM eliminates the nested CSS selectors as well. All these helps the code more maintainable. Now let's have a look at the overall acceptance of the popular naming conventions for the past few years. This graph indicates the likes and dislikes of the UI developers who are aware of such CSS methodologies. From the graph, it is evident that the overall acceptance of BEM is around 20% more than the very next CSS methodology. Now, what is BEM? The B, E, and M stands for block, element, and modifier. If you can give a definition, then we can say that BEM is a highly useful, powerful, and simple naming convention that makes your front-end code easier to read and understand. And also we can say that it is easier to work with, easier to scale, more robust and explicit, and a lot more strict. Uh, this looks uh, uh, little tough, but simply we can say that it is nothing but a popular CSS naming convention used for assigning meaningful CSS class names to the HTML blocks. For example, this is a card. This is a card layout taken from a web page. We can name this block structure as a card. And there are many subblocks. As you can see in the image, there are many subblocks can be seen inside this main block, each named as elements. Here in the image, title of the card, description in the card, and the button and also this image are considered as the elements. We can also modify the similar blocks or elements with an additional styling applied to it. Here in our example, we have modified the card with class name card red and transformed the card to card color to red. Similarly, you can change the card color to blue as well. We will see how it can be achieved in the upcoming session. So this is the way how we put meaningful names to the HTML blocks. When you get the design of a web page like this, you must first think, how can you group the HTML blocks and give meaningful names to each block? Once you have grouped and identified HTML blocks, you can give meaningful name to the main blocks like this: YouTube header, this area, then YouTube main, this area, YouTube sidebar, this area. So in other words, we can say the blocks are independent, reusable, and usually bigger components of a web page. All right. The elements inside the blocks can be named as YouTube header search. That is inside this particular YouTube header. Then YouTube main video thumbnail. This one is actually inside YouTube main block. Then YouTube sidebar list item is this one is actually inside this particular block. So we named like this. So this is the block element. So we named or we identified this block as YouTube header. This element is actually inside this particular block. So we named it like block underscore underscore search, block name underscore underscore the element name. This is how we apply name using BEM. Here in this example, this is the main block, that is YouTube main. We name the class like this. We put block name as YouTube main like this, then underscore underscore video thumbnail. Video thumbnail is the name of this particular block. Then we put class name like this. Likewise, you can name this list item inside the YouTube sidebar like this, YouTube sidebar underscore underscore list item like that. Okay. Here, when we take the header portion of the YouTube interface, for example, we can give class names for the main block as YouTube header. As you can see, this area is the YouTube header, and the items or elements inside this main block can be identified as the hamburger menu. It's not actually given inside this code, but it should be there. Then the YouTube logo, then the header search, then the header list, and the items inside this list also named as YouTube header item. So this way you can arrange the blocks and subblocks. This is how we name the blocks while building the HTML layout. And let's see how CSS can be written. The code written here is actually SCSS, a little advanced form of CSS. It is much more simple to understand. That's the reason why I put it here. That's the reason why I took it for explaining the concept. Okay. All the styles of header block can be written inside this YouTube header class. We can give the styles or rules for layouting the header by putting appropriate spacing and styling inside this curly braces. Inside this, you can put it here. And then by referring YouTube header as parent, we can style the elements inside the logo as shown here. While talking about this, I wish to say one thing. I have seen many UI developers follow this way while putting styles into HTML elements. But if you are really using Sass, then you must follow this way. In Sass, the ampersand takes place the parent name. So if you are using Sass, a real Sass version in your project, you must use this way. Usually people put the class names like this: YouTube header, here again repeating the header name here. So same, this can be achieved like this by writing like this. So YouTube header, the ampersand replaces the parent's name. So if you want to write the style for the list item, then you can put YouTube header ampersand list, then the rules like this. While considering the actual HTML structure, there are some chances for such situations when the element can contain another element like this, but can be written in BEM like this. This is wrong. Okay, actually, you can see that the YouTube header list, what I am referring is this block. You can see that inside this YouTube header list, there are some sub-elements. These are sub-elements as compared to these elements. If you consider this as a block, YouTube header, The hamburger menu, logo, search area, and the list item block and the avatar area are the elements inside this block. And the sub elements are, this input is the uh, sub element of this input area. Also, this button is the sub element of this input area. Likewise, this list item is the sub element of this particular list area. So usually I've seen that many of the UI developers used to write class names like this: YouTube header underscore underscore list. That is the element. This is the block, and this is the element, and this is the sub element. People think they can write sub elements like underscore 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 element, like this: YouTube header list, YouTube header list underscore underscore item. But this is actually wrong. Um, there is no such thing as block underscore element underscore underscore element. Again, I have seen many times, many people give class names like multiple levels of class names. I've seen many times, but this is wrong. Don't ever put like that. Naming the element in BEM, if you are really following classic BEM, then you must limit it to the first level only. Naming the element only up to one level is permitted. Okay, so in this case, you can name like uh, like this. See, YouTube header, YouTube logo, YouTube search. This is the YouTube header list. You can put the style for YouTube list here. Don't put YouTube header list item, sorry, YouTube header item inside this YouTube header list. If you are following, some developers used to write YouTube header list, then inside that YouTube header list, they put YouTube header item inside here. So don't ever put like that. Put it like this: YouTube header is the main block, then all the elements inside this input itself is considered as the single level element. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. So don't ever put like that. Then we need to talk about the use of modifiers. Modifier styles are usually applied to both blocks and elements. Like I said earlier, we can modify similar blocks or elements with an additional styling applied to it. Uh, the naming of a modifier must start with its parent block name, then two dashes after it, like this, and end with the modifier name. This is the default syntax for that. Uh, Here in this example, you can see that this is the HTML structure of a form. And here you can see I have given form large. This is the modifier for this particular block, and form large for this particular block. This is the modifier. So this is how I written here: form hyphen hyphen large. You can somehow, if you apply this particular style, then you will get a bigger form. Likewise, we can also style the smaller forms styles inside these curly braces. So if you replace form large with form small, then you will get, you can easily customize, or you can easily modify the existing form with just a single modifier. Likewise, the button class, this is the actual block element, the name of the button, it's an element. So it usually written like this: form underscore underscore button. And this is the modifier. Here we modify this button with the red color: form underscore underscore button hyphen hyphen red. This is the block element modifier structure given here. So when you replace this form button red with the form button green, you will get a blue colored button. So this way we can modify the similar blocks or elements with an additional styling applied to it. And now, even if now you understand what is the concept of using BEM, even if BEM is less confusing than other CSS methodologies, there are few problems I've seen with the syntax that can cause issues in production as well as cause confusion for developers, especially when they need to slice a larger screen with many subcomponents. Like I said before, there are many uh, uh, elements inside the main block, also many sub-elements inside many elements. So when the code or when the code get more complex, then uh, this will, the use of them make some confusion for the developers. So in order to tackle such problems, I prefer to use a slightly tweaked version of BEM. Generally call it as ABEM, Atomic Block Element Modifier. As you can see in the image, the atoms are super simple components that normally consist of just a single element. Some examples for that are button is an example for an atom, input, anchor tag, list item, etc. are some examples for atom. Then the molecules. The molecules are small groups of elements or components. That is for example, a single form field showing a label and an input field. So we can group a few atoms and together to make a molecule. And the organisms are large, complex components made up of many molecules and atom components. Example for that is full registration form. Okay, by using this, we will get a clear picture of the UI. We can easily distinguish the common components at atom level, then atoms group together to form the molecular structure, and finally, the molecules constitute to form the organisms. In other words, the logical grouping can be made pretty quickly and easily without much overhead. That's the main advantage of using this. And one more thing I need to say, it is not actually the combination of atomic CSS and BEM. Don't ever think like that. I just used the atomic design concept to the existing BEM methodology. That's it. Let's see how it can be used. Okay. Let me give you the idea by first comparing the syntaxes with the conventional BEM. As you can see, the length of the class name is comparatively higher in BEM than used in ABEM. You can easily relate this with this. Also, the HTML code looks little confusing, especially when it is a larger web page. And when you closely compare these two, the ABEM syntaxes uses camel case letters instead of these dashes. So this will considerably reduce the class name length. And you can see the modifier also is not used like the block name and the element name prefixes. So this way it also reduces the class name length. Here, if you wanted to use a modifier, then you must put like this: block name __ element name, then hyphen for modifier name. But in our newly invented ABEM syntax uses only just the modifier alone, the hyphen small alone, hyphen active alone. And we normally uses, in addition to this, I forgot to say that, in addition to this, like I said earlier, ABEM uses an atomic prefixes as shown here, A, M, or O. The prefix here in this example, the prefix A denotes that it is an atom level component. Similarly, using prefixes M and O, we can easily classify modules and organism as well. Let's see that. Here, let me give you an idea about how we can give styling to the elements using ABEM. when you look at the image, you can easily distinguish or categorize the elements based on the ABEM concept. As you can see from the image, here this one, the outer block is considered as the organism. That's the reason why I put O-YouTube header here. And inside this main block, there are some sub blocks out there. Those are hamburger menu. This one is an organism. Sorry, this one is considered as a molecule. So I put M hamburger menu for this particular item. M hyphen hamburger, then the camel case letter, then menu, then M logo. So this is also considered as the molecule, and this bigger one is also considered as a molecule. Molecule M hyphen header search area. Then this is also another molecule, M header list and M header avatar. And in while you looking at this image, you can easily distinguish what are the uh, 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 low level components. They are search area input. So the search area input and the search area button and the voice search icon together to form the molecule. So these are atom level components. So the input is the atom here. Uh, Search area button is another atom. Voice search icon is another atom. Likewise, in this header list, you can easily identify or distinguish header list items like this. So these three items together to form a molecule. Likewise, these three independent atoms together to form these molecules, and these many molecules together to form an organism. This way you can easily distinguish the block, and you can name the block clearly than before. When we discuss about BEM, we often focus mainly on the naming convention. But one thing about ABEM is the greater specificity control. Let me show how it can be achieved. Here you can see that all the rules or styles of YouTube header. So in that sense, we can say that the layout, the space, and the basic styling of the YouTube header, that the organism level styling can be put inside this O-YouTube header inside this curly braces. Then the molecule level, hamburger menu, logo, header search area, header list, header avatar are nested inside this particular organism. So we can define styling to each molecules based on this particular organism. So organism defines the style of each molecule in separate. Likewise, if we put this particular or these many search area, like I'm taking this example of a search area. If you remove this search area from this YouTube header and put it outside and make some other styling, you can give here. So based on this molecule, we can write styling to search area input, search area button, search area voice section, etc. So when we put in outside, so this molecule can be used any other, like I said, there are many organisms. If we put this style in another organism, then we can modify the styles of the molecules accordingly. So this level defines how the molecules gonna be styled. And here you can see each molecule has independent styles. This can be overwritten when you put inside another organism. Likewise, the default properties or default rules of each of these elements or atoms can be written like this. I haven't used any prefixes for this because these are the basic level or primary elements of a website. So I didn't use any prefixes or any names to that. But When you use this input here inside this button, you can name like this, uh, a search area input for overwriting the style. If you wanted to put some style based on the header search area, so you can put it like this: a search area input space input. So we are overwriting the style of the input using a search area input. So this is the basic concept what I wanted to tell you about ABEM. So that's it. Getting into a conclusion, let me tell you, ABEM has been an absolute lifesaver for me in terms of creating application in a modular or a component-driven way. I have been using BEM around 3 years from now. And of course, there were a few stumbling blocks I have hit along the way. That's the main reason for this tweak with the atomic prefix. While concluding, I wish to show you this quote. Attention to details is the most important trait of a UI developer. If you really wanted to get that ability, then ABEM is the way to achieve it. I hope you have found this session useful, and if you are not, if you have not given the conventional BEM a go yet, I highly encourage you to do so. Also, hoping you would try the ABEM way as well.